Welcome to the final installment of Hope for Your Home. Oh my, I hope you're ready for the incredible treat you're about to receive this evening. Tonight, in just a moment, you're going to hear an interview from Jacob with Tim and Ann Evans. Tim and Ann Evans are some of the most important people in Jacob and I's lives, as they are phenomenal marriage and family counselors. They have a great passion for the Lord themselves, a dynamic marriage, and a great commitment to seeing marriages not just survive, but thrive. I hope you're ready to lean in, take some notes, and jump in a virtual Thrive group following this interview here this evening. All right, tribe, here we go. It's time to receive some hope for your home.
Tim and Ann Evans, thank you so much for taking the time with us. You are some of the most precious people on earth to us, to Hannah and I. And actually, when we first started thinking about Hope for Your Home and this whole idea, marriage was so on our mind and heart. In fact, one thing that I heard from the very beginning of when it was hitting America was some things that were coming out of China, and some of the marriage trouble and a lot of files for divorce and those things. And I thought, okay, our church, we need to really key in on this. And so we are so honored that you're here and so blessed. We love you. How are you guys doing?
I think we're doing good.
She gets better looking every day. It's amazing. It's our team.
On the positive side, I've enjoyed the slower pace. I mean, I know that anything can get you after a while, but we've had like a lot more focused time to write, and it's been good. It's been good. But having said that, we're ready to move on.
And from a ministry perspective, we've done more Zoom than in our entire lives in the last 6 weeks, and a lot of couples are struggling.
Yes.
Let's say even the husband's a stay-at-home dad and the wife's in the marketplace, and
Yep.
all of a sudden they're under the same roof and she's still taking all her responsibility, or vice versa with the husband, which is the majority of time. So yeah, there's this kind of helps you test your mettle, but also gives you an invitation to look at things more as an opportunity to advance in intimacy, not an obstacle, like when is this over so we can get back to our normal life.
Right. And we felt that too. It's almost like we've been squeezed in certain ways. And so, a lot of the couples that we're talking to are squeezed as well. And so I think there is a real opportunity. But it's been a few weeks since we've talked, and in those weeks, like you said, you've been on a lot of Zoom. So I'm kind of curious, what are you seeing with couples during COVID-19, during this shelter season? I'm sure you've talked to a lot of people and got a pretty good grasp on what's going on. What are you seeing?
Well, I think anytime there's change, being a retired fireman and a nurse, change includes stress, and it can be positive stress and negative stress. So when there's stress, people handle it in different ways. And typically, you've been around us long enough to know that it often goes back to their family of origin, to significant emotional experiences in their life, to where they're doing as a couple. A lot of the couples listening probably have kids, so you add the kids in the mix, and it can exacerbate a lot of the daily stresses, get amped up to a higher level. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think definitely everybody's got an invitation to be an adult. I mean, to grow up and to move past their insecurities, and all of us are being pushed to the edge at some levels, and it's with different things. I said to Tim, some people love, like they'll say to us, man, it's so good spending time with my husband and wife and kids. Sheltering in has been such a unique time. Next person says, oh my gosh, being with my husband and kids is pushing me over the edge. So it's not the behavior or the event that's a problem, it's our response to it. So we're definitely being pushed over the edge with change. And Jacob, I just think it's an invitation. How are we going to respond?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to respond?
Man, that's so good. Okay, so let's jump into communication for a moment. So in our home, a lot of the things that we kind of already had, the rhythm we had, and what Hannah did and I did, and all those things was pretty clear. And now it hasn't been so clear. And so we've really seen the need to communicate go way up. I know you just wrote a book on communication. Come on, somebody. So can you just give us a few tips, help us when it comes to this whole part of communication? Because I really feel like couples who aren't slowing down to communicate are going to really be in trouble right now.
Let me just start by saying this with communication. I think right away when you say that word, people automatically think something I've got to do. I've got to fill in the blank. But I think really communication, what I want to encourage people with first is, are you a good listener?
Mm-hmm.
Because when I really focus on listening to Tim, I realize when I'm really listening and I'm asking him, is this what I heard you say? And I pull myself out of it and I take my own triggers out of it, I respond to him totally differently than if I'm listening to him, I'm triggered by something and I respond out of that unhealed area in me or that immature area. So listening is huge, huge, huge.
We have some golden questions in the book. And I know we've talked to you guys about this, but it's like, as far as listening, you know, do you listen to agree or disagree? I default to that falling out of
So
bed.
many
Like,
times.
yes, no, black, white, up, down is kind of how I'm wired. I wish it wasn't so.
Especially if you're a fixer or a leader.
Yeah, like do it, get it done.
Yeah.
What,
So
you know,
give us an example, because I think that's really huge, and because of the pressure on all of us right now, you know, I think we can find ourselves being triggered a little quicker, or maybe I can. I'll just say so. But any examples there?
even a current one with what we're all dealing with this global pandemic and stuff. Something as simple as, you know, mapping out our plan, you know, our counseling appointments, our Zoom appointments, working on our next book, all the things we have going, plus our own marriage and family and children and grandchildren stuff. So we'll map out our day, and Ann might say, well, we do need to go to the grocery store, this. And rather than listen to understand, I'll agree or disagree. I'll be like, well, no, we don't need to do that today. We can do that tomorrow. We got it. You know, it's like, I'm not even hearing what she's saying. Sometimes don't let her finish the sentence. So do I listen to agree or disagree? Number one. The second golden question is, do I listen to direct or control? On a bad day, I'm even worse at that, Jacob.
Yeah.
You know, my whole paramilitary fire department career, directing and controlling was a pathway to promotion. You know, as you know, senior co-pastors with your bride, you guys, there's a measure of directing and controlling that's just intrinsic in that position. That's how you function.
Especially if one of the people is a very strong personality or a strong leader or strong decision maker. I think directing or controlling is like a passive way of saying, let's shorten up this conversation because I don't really want to talk with this many words about that. Let's just do A, let's just do B. And for the person that's listening, especially if you're a verbal processor, that can be very discounting.
Or an
It's
internal
like,
processor.
I mean a verbal processor where I need to say things out loud. That would be me. I need to hear myself say it before I understand it. So if Tim cuts me off with directing and controlling, he's kind of cut off my way of understanding what it is I'm trying to say.
So the three golden questions: do you listen to agree or disagree? Do you listen to direct or control? Or do you listen to understand? And when you come from that spirit, the atmosphere in a marriage with your kids, coworkers, colleagues, whatever, there's just a different sense that's going on.
So back to the scheduling our day, if Tim says we have a Zoom appointment, I need to run to the office, we need to stop at the grocery store, and he starts directing the order it'll be in, it would be so much more intimacy building if he said, are you saying that you want to go to the grocery store first before we do the Zoom and before we go to the office? Or did you just need to get groceries sometime before the end of the day?
Even like the golden questions, like, help me understand what's your goal for today?
And
what's your plans? What's your priorities, so we can work together as a team?
And I might say back to you, if you're being that cooperative, like if you're actually engaging with me and giving me choices, then I want to outserve you and give you choices back and say something like, you know, I guess I don't really have an exact order. Is there a way that it would work better for you? Wow. I'm telling you, Jacob, though, if he would have started with, we're going to the grocery store first, even if it's not that important, I would have met that with resistance.
Because control responds to control. So if I'm going to try to control and grab the steering wheel and say, this is what our day is going to look like, you know, our natural bent, our propensity is to control back. But when I release control and say, I want to understand, all of a sudden we're intimate allies. We're moving towards that direction, but we're on the same team. We're for each other. We have each other's back.
So being a good listener, am I a good listener? Do I listen to agree or disagree, to direct or control, or to understand? I mean, oh my goodness, if couples, listeners, doesn't even have to be a couple, anybody listening would grab hold of that skill, and you wouldn't even have to read the rest of the book. You would have such a firm start on where to go that you'd be on strong ground.
And I like to put some meat on the bones. So practically, when I was in my 20s, we went to counseling, and oh my goodness, was I a poor communicator? Agree or disagree, director control. I had PhDs in that. But listen, understand what? The decision's already been made. Give me something, another fish to fry. That's how I kind of did my life. And I remember our counselor challenged us to reflect back, slow down and reflect back. I was like, okay, no problem. Oh my gosh, I would rather climb Pikes Peak backwards than
Why do you
reflect back, because my mind is always going. Some of it's even a good thing in the way God's wired me and some of my, spiritual gifts and good propensities. Yeah. But it's like, to reflect back, I had to get out of what we would say the smaller story where Tim's the main character. It's all about me. And our counselor encouraged us to ask the Holy Spirit to help you step into the larger story where God's the main character. It's not about me. And by reflecting back, it's really honoring and treasuring my bride, saying, hey, baby, is this what I hear you say? You want to go to the grocery store today, but do you know what time? Unpack that a little bit so we can be on the same page. I'm for you. I'm with you. I have your back. We're allies. So reflecting back is, for the people watching, you want to try a practical tool, just reflect back with your spouse for a season, or with a friend if you're single, or
it's a little
roommate.
tougher than it sounds. A little tougher than it sounds.
Yeah, well, I mean, something that you said a little bit ago, I deal with for sure, and that's trying to shorten the conversation. Hannah's talking, and I, my mind is a lot of times racing, and I'm thinking this could be said in 5 seconds. So I'm like, in my mind, being less and less patient towards what she's saying, and just that piece alone, I feel like is really good to slow down. Okay, this is something that is maybe a weakness in me in some ways, and I think it can really hurt us right now, because like I said, I think we're all we could have the tendency to be more on edge right now.
Yeah.
And those kind of things. So my dear goodness, anything else that comes to mind when it comes to communication? I just feel like that's so good.
Well, I was thinking, just in response to just what you said, I think whenever you look at the other person, listening to them as a task that you need to do, because whatever they say, you need to check it off or respond to it, then it becomes like a form of religion. Meaning I'm just following the rules. I'm trying to get the job done. If I look at every opportunity with Tim and other people as an invitation, an opportunity for intimacy building, whether I'm talking about the schedule for the day, or conversations with the kids, or things I'm observing in our family, or going to the grocery store, all those things are an opportunity for intimacy. And yet when you think of opportunity for intimacy, you'll automatically go to, what do I need to do? Do we need to go away for a weekend? Do I need to buy flowers? Should I make a meal? Make reservations at a restaurant? It's like, okay, how about back up that train and just listen better? How about that being an opportunity for intimacy? Life isn't really that complicated, and intimacy building doesn't have to be a major event. It can just be a form of surrender.
And I think we also consider the power of words. That's one of our chapters, but in other chapters, nonverbal communication, being in the house alone, we got kids nearby and grandkid and stuff, but it's like, for a lot of the people listening, they probably have children, the majority of them or whatever. So you're quarantined and it's a tighter space. So I'd encourage you to be more aware of your body language, because I think everybody's RPMs are a little bit amped up right now. So, I'm a fast talker. I talk with my hands. Sometimes Anna will say, hey, you're getting big. Now, after 43 years of marriage.
What does that mean? It means you're like dominating the space. You're like dominating the space.
So I'll sit down. Sometimes, seriously, Jake, I'll put my hands under my legs. I'll sit down and I'll let her stand. But okay, not really. I really want to be with you, babe. What can I? Because I could get excited and animated and interface. And, well, this is what we need to do. And so she goes, you're pointing. I just want to go shopping. I'm like, yeah, but then we could go here. And then we go there. Let's go to Red Rock and get our extra. I'm like, yeah. Oh, man, just take a breath and reflect back. I'm still struggling with it. Seriously. Yeah. So what's your body language?
We're still learning? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think when we're married 50 years, 7 years from now, then we'll have some wisdom to share. But we got a ways to go. But think about your tone, your intensity, your pace, she says my eyebrows go like Nike swooshes when I'm angry. It's like, she's right. So that may be a challenge for some of our listeners as well.
My gosh. Okay, so this is like light bulbs are going off, because all right, so we can't go on dates like we normally can. And so I think a thought that is coming to my mind, maybe some of the listeners as well, is that, well, I can't really work on the marriage because we can't go on a date. We can't go to the movies. We can't do these things. But what you guys were just saying is there's some things that we can do right now where we don't have to wait to get to the movies or go to a restaurant or go to a romantic dinner. Like, we can learn to listen. We can learn to communicate. We can look at our verbal skills. Anything else you just want to say about that? Because again, it's like tools that people need right now. And I think that mindset is, well, we can't go on dates. So therefore we're just kind of stuck.
Right.
And we can't really, our intimacy is just struggling here.
But that's putting the focus again on the event, as if the restaurant builds intimacy, the getaway builds intimacy. It's really us, like, take back the power. We're the ones that build intimacy. I think a while back, a couple weeks ago, there's so many YouTube clips on people sheltering in, and some little kids had set a fancy table in the garage for their parents because they knew that they went on date nights and they knew that they couldn't go on date nights. So the kids, knowing that about their parents, set the table and then served them dinner, which was so sweet.
Wow.
But going back to what you said about intimacy building, even for you to say to the kids, hey, I'm at the kitchen table on a date with mom, so if you guys could not disturb me, because she's the most important person in my world right now. Not only are you putting coins in your wife or your husband's account, you're modeling to the kids a priority level that I love you to the moon and back, but your mom is a priority to me. Now you need to work on getting busy someplace else, or just leaving us alone for an hour. When the timer goes off on the clock, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Oh my goodness, Jacob, that would be so intimacy building.
And again, we define intimacy as to know and be fully known. So it's like, again, the fireman in me, we're trained. If you can't get in the front door, you check the back door. You can't get in the back door, you break a window, you cut a hole in it, for whatever you need to do to get the job done. And I think sometimes couples get in that frame of mind, like you said, well, we can't go on a date, we can't go to our favorite restaurant, we can't go, yeah, those things are off the table in many cases. None of the restaurants are even open right now in Colorado Springs.
So get creative.
So it's like, what could you do? Why don't we go online and take our spiritual gifts assessment? Because I know your number one spiritual gift has been service, but maybe it's changed. What's your second one, or your emerging, love? I'm talking about love languages or spiritual gifts or temperaments, where, oh my goodness, that could really amp up an invitation to advance in intimacy.
I just happened to think of an example. I was getting dressed this morning, and the Today Show, or some show was on, some talk show. They were interviewing a chef from Chicago, and he was trying to creatively find new ways to build his business. Now, liken that to your marriage. He said, literally what our team does every single day is we sit around the table, on our cameras from our own home, creatively thinking new ideas to do the same thing we did before in a different way. Isn't that what we're doing in our marriage? So the owner of the restaurant said they filled packages and they put a link to a website where when people open the package after buying the dinner for 4, they watch the cook make it from his restaurant. So he thought they sold out. It was a great idea. But my first thought was, wow, I wish we were that creative with our marriage, where you sat down with your spouse and said, okay, we can't go away. We were planning on going on vacation. We can't. Let's get creative. One of our partners for real life just sent us a video, and their family, they were all in bathing suits with like bright lights, and they put a palm tree, and the dad was singing them songs. They were supposed to go to Hawaii and they couldn't go. So he said, you know what, we're going to create Hawaii right here. And I was like, it was so funny. We watched the video and we were laughing and we gave him a thumbs up. But those are all examples of, we need to intentionally be creative. How can we do the same things we did before in entirely new ways and get some of the same, if not better, results? Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. And that whole idea to know and be known, and that, I mean, when you think of it that way, we really have a lot of opportunities right now to get to know each other. And so, like something that you said in the very beginning, we really do have an opportunity at this time. And so I just love this conversation, because I feel like many have thought that we need those things in order to grow close together, that those date nights and date nights are huge, and we have to get away in those things. But right now, there's other creative things that we could do. So good. Okay, so a few strategic things that you suggest couples focus on right now, prioritize? Maybe some of those already fell out, but any other things come to mind?
Well, everything that we're talking about requires you being intentional. And in order for me to be intentional, I have to kind of be standing in my own boots. I can't like have my mind floating all around. So throughout the day, I make choices like, am I grounded? Like, am I in my own body? Am I listening to that person? Just before the phone call, this is such a small thing. These are the crazy little things that we do all day, but you know, we all have a way of doing life. Well, I just have a way of folding the blanket on the couch. I like it that way. I do it a certain way. I think it looks good. Tim, somebody had used the blanket last night. It was all bunched up on the floor, and Tim started to fold it, and he was folding it in an entirely different way than what I fold. I don't do it that way. It doesn't look good that way in my mind. And he looked at me and he goes, "This isn't the way you fold the blanket, is it?" He goes, how do you want to fold the blanket? Because I want to do today whatever you want to do, because today is all about you. And he said it in a joking way, and it reminded me how silly I can be about small things. So I was gently corrected about that OCD way of folding. But just in that small little second that he's probably like, "What are you talking about?" That was an intimacy building moment where he had to surrender his way for my way. And I just wanted to respond by saying, thanks. I really want to respond by saying, "Oh, do it whatever way you want it. That's silly, but thank you."
But when you're triggered, kind of corrected in a sense, you know, I could have gone down some different alleys, and on a bad morning, you know, would have been like, you know, "Oh, we have to fold it your way? What, your way is the right way?" Well, I've made beds at the firehouse for 20 years, and you can bounce a quarter on them. They're tight and they're tucked and they're, well,
It's
I
crazy.
mean, I could have went off in my lane and my narrative. She could have said, "Well, you know what? I worked at the hospital. I made more beds than you ever did." It's like, this is my blanket. It's like, none of that. I'm like, little things like, whenever I fold a towel, I put the tag on the inside. Now, in 1,000 lifetimes, I would never do that for myself. But I know that speaks love to a woman whose number one love language is acts of service.
So those are sheltering in conversations that we're having. They're kind of blown up. Like, I wasn't talking about any of those things 2 months ago, but those are the kind of things that get revealed. And I'm more aware of it. So one of the things I'm intentionally doing for the sheltering in is saying to the Lord, Lord, as you highlight these things in me that need healing or need patience or need maturity, would you give me the next steps? Because I don't want it to just be knowledge. Oh, I found out that I'm a lot more perfectionistic than I thought. I actually want to partner with God and have him do something about it. Lord, would you help me do something?
Because if you want to go back to the intimacy, my number one intimate relationship, I long for it to be with my good Father. You know, to know and be fully known. He fully knows me in ways that I don't even know me, but I want to get to know him more intimately. From that, that's the foundation that I want to go to my primary relationship. You know, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. This is the first and foremost commandment. A second is like unto it, love your neighbor as yourself. I believe Anne's my closest neighbor. For married couples, would suggest that your spouse is your closest neighbor. We have other neighbors in our lives as you love yourself, back to your own spiritual formation, taking ownership responsibly for your choices and decisions.
It's good. Hannah and Ann are similar in their OCD. She's not sitting next to me, so I probably shouldn't say too much here, but she definitely likes.
Use that word lightly, OCD.
Yeah.
We're using it lightly.
Okay, let me time out here. We're saying OCD behavior, not identity. Okay.
Yes.
Behavior, not identity. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yes, she has. Yeah, there's she likes things folded certain ways and put back together. To me, it's just like, I know if she cleans the house or she's cleaning, you know, certain things, she wants me to notice, but I already thought it was clean, and then she cleaned it. And anyways, I'm digging myself a hole. Hannah, you do such a great job, and I love you. You're amazing. Oh my goodness.
You know, Jacob, you bring up a good point, because those attributes in me in certain situations are really admirable, and people would want to look for ways to be more like me in those situations. But when the enemy gets a hold of it and it becomes an opportunity to block intimacy for Tim, or when folding that blanket becomes more important than the relationship of the person I'm talking to, I think that's what I'm saying. it's not bad, good. It's like really observing what you're doing and giving God an opportunity to take you the next step.
And that piece is so good. It's so good right now because I think, again, in our experience, and I think many people watching, because of the different pressures and the different ways we have to communicate and all these different things, we can be triggered a little bit more quickly on certain things. You know, we have kids in the house, homeschooling, they're always around, you know, and so, but not making our trigger more important than the person, and, you know, elevating that relationship above that thing. That's really not the most important thing. It's really tough to do, but I think it's something we really have to focus on right now. That's huge.
To piggyback on that for a moment, I think the way I'm wired, my family of origin, again, 4 boys and an oldest sister and 4 girls and a middle brother. It's like a lot of dynamics in play in all different ways in that. And in my family of origin, it was really important to win, to be right, you know, let's toe to toe, let's knock it out, whatever it takes. And it's like, Ann's not really a competitive person, hardly at all. So especially early in our marriage, it's like my more motive where I was coming from was to be right and to win and to let's go back to the argument. Let me pull out my facts or my black book or my checklist or whatever. And how destructive to our intimacy. And what I found out through counseling and inner healing and deliverance was sometimes I was right. And if I went to the Pharisaical law of the land, they would say verdict for Tim. But you know what? We were distant. I was right by myself. Our intimacy was, it crashed and burned.
I was right by myself.
Exactly.
Wow.
So it's like, think about that. Sometimes it's the, you know, wife may have that more, let's get after it, you know, one more thing and one more point. And but it's like, well, if you just invite the Lord into your process, center yourself, breathe, say, let me reflect back what I hear you saying, hon, and see what your husband says. Like, what do you mean? You know?
So, you know, there's so much more we could say on everything, because we're surely not suggesting that people just surrender, go silent, go passive. You know, so there's a time to really go to the mat and to talk about things that are important. And then there's a time, like, you know, the silly blanket illustration, but in a split second, Tim used that as an opportunity to move toward me, and he surrendered his need to do it his way in a very small way. But you would be surprised how very small things, if you made adjustments throughout the day, how huge that would be by the end of the day. Very small
and
things.
You start keeping score. You start, you know, we call it no hitting below the belt. We have a chapter called Fighting Fairly. Some of the sarcasm, folding your cards, silence, correcting feelings. You should be happy I'm even folding the blanket, babe, okay? Because some husbands just leave it on the floor. That's what you should. Yeah, should according to me, you know. Keeping score, resurrecting the past, quick apology. Sorry, fine, do it yourself. I'm out of here. I'm going for a jog. You know, it's like interrupting, defending, attacking, using threats, universal quantifiers, the always and nevers. And there's another dozen or so. Like, you know, you can check those off and say, which ones do I struggle with?
And at the end of the day, you read those quickly, but at the end of the day, you would think, I caused so much destruction in the way I responded to my spouse. And what was this about? The way a blanket was folded on the couch? So I think that's what you mean, Jacob, about everybody's so much closer to the edge with sheltering in, because we don't have any place to run and hide. We can't run and hide at work. We can't run and hide.
Health club,
go places.
Store, movie.
We're kind of stuck with each other. And that can be a huge invitation to invite God in and to get some of those things moving in the right direction.
Okay, so as far as inviting God in, just any quick thoughts, like if a couple is listening here and they're like, okay, you know, whether it's a small thing or a bigger thing, and I appreciate the fact that you brought that in, there could be bigger issues, but okay, we want to invite God in. There's an opportunity here, you know, when we look back to a Corona, you know, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there can be an incredible story being written, but how would we make those steps towards inviting God in? What would you say?
You know, for me, it's as simple, like it doesn't have to be complicated, as slowing down long enough to have the presence of mind that I made a prior commitment that I wanted to invite God in. So here I am in the middle of blanket folding, a discussion with Tim, and Lord, give me a minute to pause and interject into the story. Lord, I want to invite you into the story. How important is this for me? Just a moment of just saying to the Lord, Lord, I officially invite you in. Like, it doesn't have to be this back and forth with Tim and I can pause, I can take a breath, and I can do what I said I wanted to do earlier, invite you in. So it's not a big ceremony. It's not like it's, you've seen this before, but Tim and I have this in our house. We give it to people. I give it to clients when they come to the office. IOTL stands for Inquire of the Lord. In the Old Testament, when people inquired of the Lord, when they invited God into the process, the story went one way. When they did it themselves, the story went another way. So,
and I think the piggyback on that again, it's like, I think I like to have the theological foundation. That sounds a little whatever, maybe to some more hyper spiritual, but I want to know that, the word of the Lord says the Holy Spirit dwells in me.
Mm-hmm.
The word of the Lord says if I'm lacking wisdom on how to respond or how to react, I can ask God, who gives to all generously and without reproach. So I want to ask for wisdom. It says in the good book that do not refuse him who's speaking. I think when I get in trouble, it's because I cut God out of the picture. I can handle this. I get this. I'll just call you for the big ones. It's like, if you call him for the little ones and just pause, like Ann said, take a breath, center yourself, say, how can I reflect your heart to Ann over this blanket? Because I could be triggered in a half a dozen goofy ways.
and he is speaking. God is speaking. Whether or not we recognize his voice and what does that look like in our life? Well, maybe it's snapping back at Tim in a sharp way that's unkind and feeling that conviction in my heart. Well, could that be God speaking and just convicting me? I think part of inviting God in is learning how God speaks to me. What does it feel like for God to speak to me? If it's not audible words, is it just a knowing in my heart? Is it a sense of conviction? All these things we could talk about for a long time, but that's just an idea, just inviting him in.
Healthy communication begins with God for followers of Christ. Start there and you're up at the plate. Okay, you may get hit by a pitch or whiff a few times, but you're also going to jack a few out of the park with God, as your coach, as your mentor, encouraging all the more.
It's kind of like, go ahead.
Well, I just love the thought there, just to inquire of the Lord, like pause. So you're in the midst of you could feel yourself getting frustrated. You have an opportunity to respond in a certain way. Just pausing and saying, God, I invite you in. What way would you have me respond? And I think if we just stopped and asked that question, it would be so powerful right now. That would be huge.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I could go on. You go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, as we're thinking about all these things, is there any last thoughts you just want to say to couples during this season? Any lingering things you just want to invest in us today?
I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. I think just the fact that you showed up and you're sitting in front of a computer and your intent or the desire of your heart is to do something to build into yourself, to build into your marriage or family, like, good for you. Like, that is such a huge step. And it's such a reflection of who you are as a person, that you're teachable, that you're available, that you're hungry. And isn't that like, if you were looking at your kids and you were making observations and you said, wow, they're really teachable and they're available and they're hungry, wouldn't that be a score? Like, as a parent, you'd be like, man, that's going to take you a long way. So I do want to encourage couples. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you every time you open the Bible. Thank you every time from the Lord that you are hungry and want to learn, because he is going to meet you there.
Yeah, I think that was a good thing. And I'm thinking, the calls we've had on our new Zoom life, a lot of them in marriages also has to do with sexual intimacy. And, we've written an entire book, Naked, Reclaiming Sexual Intimacy in Marriage. But I was talking to one guy 2 days ago and he said, we always said that our problem was we didn't have enough time to be sexually intimate. We got all the time in the world and our sex life is worse than it's been in months. Wow. So we process and walk through that. But for you married couples, if that's something that has raised a lot of red flags during this pandemic period, talk to a pastor, talk to a small group leader, make a appointment with a counselor that specializes in some of that stuff, because the church is not doing a bang up job in describing God's design for marriage, developing a theology for marriage, for sexuality, for intimacy. So that may be something else during this time to say, what's one goal we can make to advance in intimacy, not just spiritually, not just emotionally, relationally, but also sexually and physically, and even with our health, not just sex, but your whole body is under the body oneness part as well. So that was my thought as you're closing there. But I agree. Thank you, guys.
The power of oneness, like how powerful that is. You were saying we don't hear it enough. We don't hear enough positive messages on how important sexual intimacy is and how it brings us together as a couple. Anybody listening, I would love to hear testimonies when the two of you are clicking together, spirit, soul, and body. Are you not a much stronger force than when you're disconnected? Just yes or no. And so when you feel that strong force and sexuality as a part of it, you want to find ways to keep growing in those areas.
And I think of that passage in 1 Corinthians at the end of that where it talks about, my body doesn't belong to me, it belongs to Anne. Likewise, also 1 Corinthians 7, I think it is. And at the end it says, you can not engage in sexual intimacy when it's mutual, in agreement, for a specific time, temporary, and then come back together for the purpose of prayer, come back together. And the last words are, lest Satan tempt you. Mm-hmm. Jacob, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Mm-hmm. The enemy knows the power, the powerhouse when a couple is tracking spirit, soul, body, soul one is intimacy, sexual intimacy. Mm-hmm. And that's going to advance the kingdom in ways that I think has been untapped for the most part. So, we love your Thrive community of church. We, we remain your humble, devoted servants, and we pray for you guys every day. You know that, and I'm a list prayer. You're on my list, so thanks for even including us in your series on this.
Well, we love you guys, and I want to make sure people get a lot of the tools that you've created. Where do you want people to go to get a hold of the resources that you guys have kicked out?
Yeah, they can go right to Amazon. They can either go, if they know the name of the book, which they might not, but go to Tim and Ann Evans. Would they find it under Real Life too? Probably Tim and Ann Evans.
If you go to our website, it's timplusanne.com, timplusanne.com. And we've got some pictures. In fact, we have to get communication on there. We've got our other books, but they're all available through Amazon. And our prayer is that some couples get another couple or a small group. And I don't make a lot of guarantees. Mm-hmm. I guarantee God is good, but I guarantee this communication book that's literally hot off the press. If couples invest a year in that, they will be different people. Again, in their own intimacy and communication with God, first and foremost, then with their spouse, their kids, and others. Jacob will give you a money back refund if you aren't blessed by that book, right, brother?
That's right. I think it would be a great book for the listeners to get a hold of right now in this season. Just stop what you're doing. Actually, don't stop what you're doing, but order it while you can order it right now. I give you permission to just go to Amazon and start ordering it right now. I think it will help. Tim, Ann, would you pray for us as we close?
Sure.
Absolutely. Well, Lord, it's a privilege to always intercede, to stand in the gap for other people. And Lord, Tim and I together stand in the gap for Jacob and Hannah, their family, and for all the families they represent at Thrive. Lord, would you take them the next step in their spiritual journey? Like Tim said before, in spirit, soul, and body. Lord, just because they tuned in today, would you give them a kiss from heaven, a reminder that you're good? Lord, would you bless them coming out of this pandemic season? We're on our way out, hopefully. Lord, that they would leave stronger, more grounded than when they came in.
I agree, Lord, and I just thank you for the Thrive community of faith, for its leaders and members, Lord, and the kingdom impact and potential. And my sense is we've talked about a lot of things in a short period of time, and we just come against any scheme of the enemy to try to put more shoulds on your already full list, Lord. We just want each person listening to be. Reground yourself in your true identity as God's beloved son or beloved daughter. And I declare and decree that every person listening, especially you men, you husbands out there, that you see yourself the way God sees you. And then you make one next step in moving towards your bride. We just bless, Thrive. We thank you for our friendship and partnership. To God be the glory. In the name of God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen and amen.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for your time. We love you. You guys are the best.
Hey church, didn't you love that interview? Oh my goodness, they're some of our favorite people in the world. They've helped us so much. And we're really praying for marriages during COVID as well. We want to see your marriage thrive. And so I just want you to continue to lean in and see God do incredible things. So this is the last interview. We were doing a 4-week interview series. If you missed any of them, go back and watch them at thrivechurch.com. And we're just so glad to have the opportunity to bring really hope in your home in some more practical ways. And hey, today we have been at the hospital, Parker Hospital, Lone Tree Hospital, delivering these incredible gift bags filled with all kinds of stuff for the ladies who are giving birth in this season, and they can't have people visit like they normally can. And so, church, I just want to say thank you for your generosity as we're right in the middle of Love Week. And I would love for all of you to get involved this week. Love Drive is happening tomorrow, and the next day you can go to thrivechurch.com and see some items that you could donate right at Secor, and we're going to distribute it to some other incredible nonprofits that we're partnering with this week. So we love you. This week's Mother's Day. So get as many people as you can. Hannah's going to be preaching. It's going to be an incredible Sunday. But church, we love you. We're for you. If you need anything, you reach out to us. And we're just believing that God is going to absolutely speak to you during this time. And really, I pray as we look back at this COVID time, that God did incredible things in our heart. Again, we love you. We're for you. We can't wait to see you at Love Drive and again this Sunday. We'll see you, church.